to hold. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Nobody and I appreciate you being here. Now, I decided to get back onto the 1022 project because I've been putting it off and I've really missed shooting it. It's been a lot of fun. I have a little know your limits target that I wanted to get back into. But before I started doing that, I wanted to do some easy do-it-yourself mods to this, which if you've seen previous videos, you know that I've never owned a 1022 before. And so I wanted to figure out what I could do very simply and cheaply to improve the accuracy of this. And of course, the first and foremost one, I changed out the stock because the stock that it came with was just terrible. So this has been a big improvement in and of itself. If you remember, one of the issues that I had to deal with was that I had a, from the chambering process on this, there were some burrs right there on the lands and grooves that I was wondering if I could get rid of without any special equipment. I mean, really, to do it properly, you would need to put the barrel in a lathe and face the chamber end down, 20, 30 thousandths, and then come back in with a reamer and redo it and also set the shoulder back and all that. But I wanted to see what I could do without all of that. So that was the first thing. So what I did was I took some oak dowels and I turned them down on my belt sander, just so that it would be an interference fit, and I hammered them in. And I was hoping that as that dowel engaged the lands and grooves, and it would hopefully start turning and peel away those little burrs. And I was successful to a little bit of a degree. I got rid of the biggest one and kind of changed some of the smaller ones just a little bit, but there are still burrs there, and I don't think I'm going to be able to do that without actually doing it the right way. So anyway, now I came out yesterday after that process and I shot some rounds and I will show you the results now. All right, so just as a refresher, this is for 50 yards with the Ely bench rest Outlaw. Yeah, I started to put a Y right there. This is before the attempted fix 782 and 479. Still pretty good. I was really happy. Okay, so after the fix, let me explain this mess and it'll make sense here really quick. So 669, pretty good. Between the second and third one, which this is actually 3 and 4, I was trying to figure out why all of a sudden the groups were opening up to over an inch, and it finally dawned on me that while I was shooting some of these, I was talking on the phone with a buddy of mine trying to figure out an electrical problem, and I was really bearing down on the rifle. And as soon as I relaxed and just supported the rifle, the group tightened back up. So if we take these two, which I shot the same, it's about a 0.6-ish, somewhere in there, a little over a 6. So mental math between the old and the new, pretty much the same group size. So the fix really didn't do much for for what I was hoping. But it was a fun mental exercise, and I had fun doing it. After that, I figured it would be a good time to go ahead and do some of the regular internal mods, which were going to be very simple things, for the most part. Doing some polishing of some engagement surfaces, modifying the bolt a little bit. The bolt face is not flat. I'm sure you're surprised. So I wanted to see what I could do with that. All right, so I had the rifle broken down. So the first thing that I'm going to work on to try to make this feel a little bit better is the back of the bolt here. Now, it seems like one of the common mods is to go ahead and give this a little bit better of a radius to make it going over the hammer just feel a little bit smoother. And that I'm going to go do on my 2x72 belt grinder. All right, so I'm back. It didn't take very long hitting it with that grinder. It is definitely a lot smoother and will help that transition. I could do more, but I'm trying to get a feel for how this is going to cycle, so I'm going to start with this. And if I need to do more, I can always come back to it. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just run these surfaces over some sandpaper, which these high spots right there. I'm just going to hit it with some 800 grit just to take off any high spots, and that way it still stays nice and polished. Now on this bolt face, you can probably see a pattern to where this side is getting smashed down a lot more than this side. This area right here, right underneath the extractor, is kind of smashed down about the same as right here. So I know the bolt face is not perfectly flat, but I'm going to hit this area with a stone, trying to keep it as flat as possible, try to knock down some of these high spots just a little bit. I'm not going to try to take it down a whole lot because I don't want to mess with the headspace on this. All right, let's see if, well, hopefully I don't mess this up. I'm going to try to keep it nice and flush up against here. Alright, so I ran out of space on the card. So I pretty much had gotten to the point where I was rotating this around so that way it was varying the pressure on the bolt face, so that way I didn't get it too out of level by any means. We're at about 44 thousandths. So that seems like a good place to stop to me. I think like 42, 43 is kind of the magic number that some say that you should go, but I want to see how this goes, and plus I don't want to get it too tight, but I'm looking forward to seeing how it does. All right, with the bolt done, I'm going to move on to the firing pin, and since this is a stamped piece, on the side that the stamp goes through after it's done cutting, I'm going to go ahead and take off the sharp corners, just so that way it doesn't catch or slow down on anything. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to do this bottom here, because this is what rides in the channel. So we're not going to take off much, just ever so slight. I'm not going to worry about this side because this side feels pretty smooth. It was this side that had the sharp edges. Now the extractor, I'm just going to run it on this 800 grit and just go ahead and polish up the sides here. That way it wants to flow freely, but I'm not taking any of this sharp corner off. That's so you can extract your rounds. All right, so next I think I'm going to hit some of these engagement surfaces on the sear and the hammer and see if I can improve the feel of it a little bit. Right now the pull is a very stubborn 5 pounds 3 ounces, and I just want to see if I can get it to where it glides just a little bit easier without actually affecting it too much. I think in order to affect it a little bit more, I need to mess with springs, but that's for another day. really hard for you to see, but gave that a nice little polish. And same here. I am going to hit this corner right here because it does engage on this little guy, whatever this piece is called. I'm going to polish it up really quick. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to tackle is this little bolt release here, or the bolt lockback. And looking at the aftermarket parts for this is basically this has been removed. And so I'm just going to do that and save myself the money. Alright, so I flattened it out quite a bit, so it would take a barely move, or not at all. I don't know. I'm going to have to try it. And if I need to take off a little bit more, I can just flatten that out a little bit more. Alright, so I had the trigger group put all back together, and not feeling a reduction in anything. If anything, the trigger just feels crisper. Doesn't feel gritty like it was before. The last thing I need to do is just kind of clean up the inside, trying to get the rest of this little spray on from when they painted the receiver. Just kind of get that out of the way. The bolt has been doing some of that, but I'm going to finish it up. Just use a little bit of a scouring pad. I also got a wood block to try to get in there and keep it flat. So most of that is cleaned up. Definitely going to be better than what it was. All right, so the wind has been playing havoc with me, and you know, this right here, I should tell you, when I first got here this morning, I just checked zero, since I had the rifle completely apart, and I had it set at 20 inch-pounds, and I threw up this really nice little tight little group, and then I shot this really fast, and that is 5 shots. I got 2 practically in the same hole right there. So I'm like, okay, good to go. So right after that, I get ready to start shooting video, and the wind starts picking up because I got this storm that was blowing through here, and it just was intermittent gusts and everything. So after waiting an hour and a half, I decided it was like, well, maybe I'll try shooting everything and see what happens. And some successes, some failures, you know, it's definitely not conclusive just because of the conditions, and I'm gonna have to come out and redo this. So, but as you can see on some of the, man, that sun is starting to blast me again. As you can see on the 20-inch actual targets, you know, things went fairly decently. Still fighting a little bit of gusts. But then I went to the torque settings, and I think, you know, when I do this again, I'm going to do them a little bit differently, because I just basically started at 10, and then I would change it to 15 and just tighten it down a little bit. I think next time I'll back it off and then go up the next increment and see how that affects things. But my 20-inch-pound, which I can't remember what the wind was like, you know, but the group opened up more than normal. But nicely, the 30-inch-pound setting seems to be pretty good, so I'm going to have to come back and investigate that. So I don't have any conclusive info other than, one, I didn't screw up the rifle. The trigger feels a lot better, doesn't feel as creepy, it feels a lot more crisp. The bolt seems to have tightened up some things, you know, since I got rid of those high spots. The bolt was probably, you know, seating a little bit at an angle compared to the bore. But I have some more investigation to do, so Not totally conclusive, but not a failure like I was afraid it was going to be. So I can continue to shoot this rifle without replacing major components, because that's what I was worried about. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate you. You have a good day.